Hotter Than Health podcast, a plant-dominant podcast for those looking to expand and elevate their lives. Each week, we will bring you provocative conversations and topics, entertaining interviews, and some of the biggest names in health and wellness to answer your burning questions. You will leave each episode with tangible tips and takeaways and understand what it truly means to live an energized and optimized life. Welcome back to this week's episode of Hotter Than Health. My name is Eliza Gelman. Thank you so much for being here. This is an episode today that we had to make a two-parter. This is an entire episode that could have been one on its own, but there was so much information that by the end of the episode, by the end of the interview, I was already emailing with his publicist to ensure that we could schedule a part 2 because there was so much good value that we skimmed the surface, we went so deep into so many different topics that he was excited about doing more. I was excited about doing more. It was such a great collaboration that we just had to bring you a part 2. That will be out next week. But who do we have on the Hotter Than Health podcast today? We have Dr. Daryl Gioffre. If you've never heard of him, he is the founder of Get Off Your Acid. It is a organic, raw, alkaline superfood brand, and they have minerals, protein. They've got different greens. They've got alkalizers for your coffee. I have personally been using a salted caramel mineral powder that takes away the super acidity in the coffee that you drink in the morning or whatever in your coffee, and I can tell that you don't have that race to the bathroom feeling, but the coffee, it still gets the job done, but it takes away that intensity, that shock that the coffee gives your gut. And that is just one of the star products from Get Off Your Acid. We are doing a giveaway, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but ensure that you are listening to this episode and engaging on Hotter Than Health podcast on Instagram, my most recent post with the information from this episode, and tag a friend. You'll be entered in to win a badass giveaway. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But who is Dr. Daryl on the podcast? Dr. Daryl is a highly sought after gut and health inflammation specialist with over 2 decades of experience in the field. He's overcome lifelong sugar addictions in addition to his own gut and mold toxicity issues. He knows firsthand what it takes to overcome adversity and challenges in the pursuit of superior health. In addition to running a successful Alkamind brand, he is also the founder of Kick Acid Enterprises, a virtual nutrition testing and coaching platform focusing on getting to the root of your inflammation issues, restoring balance, and strengthening the gut microbiome that he calls GutFitness. We talk a lot about GutFitness. We talk about cutting the sugar cravings. We talk about less acidity in the diet. And we also talk a lot from a holistic and medical perspective on what nutrition and gut health testing can do for you. And I think that a big part of what we talk about is not only what are the protocols, what are things that we have in our pantry, what can we get out of our pantry, but also if we do want to take a test, he set us up with a couple of details, and there will be a discount code in the show notes if you go to the show notes on Spotify or wherever you are listening to the podcast. And we want to make sure it's accessible if it's something that you're really interested in, is looking up the gut health tests. Like I mentioned, today is a part 1 of 2. Next week we will have part 2, and I know you all love this. Get pen and paper. There are so many details, and he makes it an incredibly relatable and understandable conversation. This wasn't something where you walk in and you feel overwhelmed with information. It's so applicable. He's a storyteller. He's such a dynamic character, and we really get into all things gut health, mold toxicity, and more just thought-provoking habits that we can center into our daily life. And that's what I really love about this podcast, is taking bits and pieces of every episode, implementing them into my day-to-day life, and noticing, instead of throwing a million different solutions at an issue, trying to go one at a time, observing the effects and benefits, and then just going for it, and then seeing what really is working. And then if it's not, get rid of it. Take what you like, leave what you don't. Without further ado, let's get Dr. Daryl on the podcast. I know you are going to eat this episode up, and I cannot wait for next week's. So, welcome, Dr. Daryl, to the podcast. Dr. Daryl, before we started recording, you mentioned that you were just dealing with mold, like an insane amount of mold, you and your son. Can you dive into that? Because you mentioned it's not just about black mold. What were some of your symptoms? What was the entire situation? What happened?
I just hear that word mold and I get the chills. It's like the experience was crazy. But again, I believe God gives us things for a reason. And I'll tell you what I kind of drew from this. But we were in New York City, that's where my practice was for 22 years. And then July of 2020, we just decided we want to get out of the city. The city was nuts. We always want, I had a, my son, Braden and Aaliyah, they were, Braden was 6 at the time, and I believe Aaliyah was 3. And we just wanted to move them into just a more natural environment, not the concrete jungle. New York is always home. I love New York, but wanted to get out. So we decided to move to Newport Beach, California. And we get there and we didn't know like how we were gonna like it. I love the whole surf vibe there, and it's just a beautiful area right by the water. But we didn't know how we were gonna like it and all that. So we rented a house to start, and when we move in, it's like most people think of mold. It's like, I see this black mold on the wall, like that's
Yeah.
danger. But most of the time, 80% of the time, like you can't see the mold. It's in the dust because it's microscopic, those spores. It's in the dust. It's in the walls, right? So we're living in this house unknowingly that was literally riddled with mold. And mold is it's opportunistic, just like anything. COVID is opportunistic. Like COVID doesn't kill you. It's like it's the body's resistance. That's the whole thing. It's about the biologic terrain. It's no different with bacteria, with candida, mold, even cancer, right? So it was interesting because my wife, Chelsea, and my daughter, like they did pretty well. Like they didn't really have any symptoms. But my son, a few months in, it's Christmas and maybe like a week before, and my friend Claire was over. We're making healthy gingerbread cookies, and my son started jumping up and down like this. And Claire's like, "Oh, Brayden, you're so excited!" And I look over at my wife. I'm like, "This is not excitement. I've been noticing some stuff over the last month or so." And I'm actually concerned. Like, there's something more to this. There's something more going on with him. And
Wait,
literally within a
how
few,
old is your son at this time?
he's 6. He turns 9 in just a week or so, but he was 6 at the time.
Okay, got it.
So like I'm concerned, as a father and a doctor. I'm like, what's going on here? And so basically, like over the next few weeks, his symptoms start getting worse. What started out as what he called them his jumpies, right? Because he was jumping up and down. What started out as jumpies actually started turning into neck twitches. He starts going like this. I
Huh.
mean, just heartbreaking. And as it keeps going on, then it starts turning into verbal tics. And I'll never forget. And now, like, I'm starting to get like a little symptomatic, but like I'm also flying back and forth to New York City every 3 weeks because my practice is in New York, right? And so I'm
So you're
going back
like,
and
oh, it's
forth.
fatigue from travel and yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like, I got a lot of stress, it's like it's COVID. I'm going back and forth. New York City was nuts. So was California. My son starts developing these symptoms. And as like a doctor, not just a dad, I'm like, what's causing this? Like I'm the guy that helps everybody. I'm fixing everybody. And I can't figure out in this moment what's going on with my son. And so I'm like developing like these little symptoms like brain fog, some sinus stuff, but I just chalked it up to what you just said, which is just the stress of everything that's been going on. And then I'll never forget, it was April 21st, 2021, and we had gone out to dinner. And at this time, like his tics, right, neurologic tics, were in full force. And there was a girl sitting at the table next door at this Italian dinner, and literally every 10 seconds, he's got a tic like this. And I
Mm,
just, as a dad, I'm looking at my wife across the table, and I'm just like, oh, I just want to get through this dinner as quickly as possible, just to get him out of that environment. Because I know he's also trying to hold them in. And
sure.
same thing
It
at
makes it
school,
worse.
he would hold them in, and when he would get home, they would unleash. And so, and again, I, I start becoming an investigator. I start, researching everything possible. I'm calling all the top experts, my friends and colleagues. This person's a brain expert. This one's a therapist. This one's a functional medicine doctor. Because I just want to have a soundboard. I'm so emotionally attached to this as his dad. I want to run it by, other people. And that's when like the therapist starts saying, Tourette's, Tourette's. I'm like, no. I'm like, you're not gonna label my son with some name. Like there has to be a cause.
Yeah.
If you look at like a diagnosis, Eliza, di means two, agnosis means not knowing. Two people, the doctor and the patient, don't know what the hell's going on. So it's like, let's stop diagnosing. Let's get to the root cause of why
Uh,
it's happening. So we get home after that dinner, and me and my wife are just like really just upset about what's going on. I'm flying out the next morning. I'm like, oh, it's brutal. And we just decided to play a board game. It was Candyland. Remember that game growing up?
oh, it's the best. My favorite
Yeah,
game.
the best game. So we're playing Candyland, and all of a sudden, my son starts going like this, and he starts going poop, poop, and he goes looks at me, he goes,
He said what? Oh, he apologized?
sorry. He said sorry, and
Angel.
I look at my wife, and like we have tears in our eyes, and we're like just doing whatever we can to like not just like unleash the tears in front of him.
Oh,
So yeah, so it was really like a tough time. And then the next morning I left to New York, and every time I leave to New York, they would go running after my Uber. So there was a lot of stress. That's kind of my point. Like when I say things are
yeah.
opportunistic, stress is the biggest killer. I mean, it outweighs anything you could drink or eat a million times to one in terms of the inflammation it causes, the acidity
Mhm.
it causes, how it suppresses your immune function. It literally, you stop
Yes.
digesting because when you're stressed, your body goes into fight or flight. Like all you care about is getting away so that T-Rex doesn't come and eat you for lunch, right?
Yes.
But here's the problem: is that like we're all marinating in our cortisol, our stress hormone. We literally are so stressed physically, emotionally, chemically, EMFs, electromagnetic. Like we are being bombarded by this. It causes us to do this, right? Our vibration, and we become more opportunistic to all these things. So
Mm.
ideally, like our body should be resisting these, like my wife Chelsea did, and like Aaliyah did, but for the stressful reasons. Braden was a few years older. Every time I left to go back to New York, he got very, very upset because daddy was leaving. I would come back, I would land, I would get to the house at like 10, 11 at night, and they would like be like fighting who's going to sleep with daddy that night. So
Aw.
it was tough. And then literally a week after I left, when that night happened, I'm in New York City, and I'm at an Airbnb, and my tongue starts contracting. Like imagine your tongue starts contracting
Oh my God.
24/7, like you're doing this like a bicep and you can't
Like
stop it.
just throbbing.
Not
Weird.
just throbbing, but like
Like I guess like
contract.
clenching.
Imagine you're doing this to your bicep and
Yeah.
you're doing that and you don't stop and you
Oh
don't
my
stop.
God.
Imagine that's your tongue. And I mean, I as a doctor, I know how important your tongue is, but I didn't know how important your tongue is. Like the amount of things that your tongue does. It's like it's the strongest muscle in your body. It's got the most innervation of every muscle. And here I am, like in this New York City apartment, and I'm like freaking out. Sometimes as a doctor, too much. I'm thinking, okay, I know that this tongue is controlled by the hypoglossal nerve. All right, do I have a brain tumor? Do I have cancer?
Oh no.
Like I'm going to that place, right? And so anyway, I can't stop it. I'm doing everything. I'm like, taking Epsom salts baths, magnesium. I'm biohacking, doing all the things I know. Brain tap. I can't do anything. I mean, when I'm talking, because my tongue is swollen, I'm getting a lisp. I couldn't meditate because this took me out. I couldn't sleep until finally I was so tired I passed out, and I woke up the next morning thinking that this was a bad dream, but it wasn't. It was actually realistic. So I called my good friend up, Dr. Jerry Kiritola, one of my closest friends and mentors. He's the top biologic dentist in the world. I'm like, Jerry, I'm freaking out. Like my tongue is contracting. I don't know what's causing this. He's like, get your butt down to my office. He's literally 30 blocks down on Park Avenue. So I go in there as a biologic doctor, which he is as well. Sometimes, Eliza, we don't know what causes a specific symptom.
Yeah.
It's like there's so many different reasons, which is why we got to get to this root cause and stop going after the symptom. Yeah, I want people's symptoms to go away yesterday, just like I wanted my symptoms to go away. But most doctors are doing this with like drugs and surgery, right?
Yes.
So unless it's like a crisis, like we have the best crisis care system in the world, right? But we don't have a
Not
healthcare
preventative.
system.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, there's nothing healthy or caring about our system. Again, if I get hit by like a car, cancel, rewind, delete,
Wouldn't want to be
take me,
anywhere else. Yeah.
yeah, take me to the hospital. But like all the other things, like what are we doing proactively, as you said, to prevent it? So, long story short, I go to his office. We found old root canals. I had a root canal from high school here, here, wisdom tooth cavitation. So, we don't know what's causing this dystonia, what it's called on my tongue, but the whole thing is like whenever you don't know what's going on, what we need to do as people and as doctors with my patients, the cause of all dis-ease, which is lack of balance in the body, lack of harmony, is deficiency and toxicity, right?
Mm.
So again, your body needs something it's not getting in some form of nutrient, and or there's toxins that are getting into the body that are making your body become more toxic, right? So it's like a plant. If the plant begins to wilt, most doctors will say, give it drugs, give it surgery. But no,
Sure.
again, if that plant's going to die, right? But ultimately, give that plant water, give it sunlight, give it nutrients. But here's the problem is that you can give the plant all the things it needs to strengthen it,
But
but that plant could,
environmentally, if it's getting something, yeah.
boom, you nailed it. So maybe there's a gas station next door and there's some gasoline leaking into the soil, the root system of that plant. So no matter what you do to strengthen that plant, it's still wilting. It's going to die. Why? Because it's toxified. And this is why so many people, they're eating like, they come to me, Dr. Daryl, like I'm on your strength eating diet. I'm taking supplements. I'm exercising. I'm meditating. Why do I still feel like crap?
Yeah.
Because there are hidden toxins in the gut, in the body, stealth pathogens like mold was with me and my son that was taking us out. And it was deeper with my son. There was also a stealth strep infection in his gut, something called Pan's Panda. I'm not sure if you ever heard of it before.
No.
So I had to become this investigator, right? And like any investigator does, you follow that evidence. And I learned that there was something called Pan's Panda, which is when you have a hidden strep infection, and that strep infection literally eats its way through the gut lining, works its way up to the brain, and then it causes inflammation of the brain. And that's what was triggering these tics. And when you have mold suppresses your immune system. Mold causes leaky gut. So any other infections that were hidden under the surface in the body, guess what happens? They become like head on to the forefront. Same thing happens with COVID. Someone gets COVID, other co-infections start to take over the body, right?
Was there something that you specifically did to figure out mold was in your home? Did you do a mold test, or was it like, okay, let's just check our environmental factors, and then you just so happened upon mold, or you knew it was a big toxin? What was that process like?
So again, like what you don't see, you don't know. And the problem with mold is that it mimics, just like Lyme, it mimics so many other common things. Brain fog, sinus issues, reflux. Like here I am, the reflux. 90% of my clients I virtually coach have reflux, and like I was getting reflux. It was insane. So like I'm having all these symptoms, but like why would I think of mold? Like mold is like the last thing, and that's why sometimes like we have to like literally think outside the box and like test and don't guess. So anyway, so how I unfolded all of this was when I went to see Dr. Kiratola, we did a culture of my tongue, and we pulled out the first root canal because we should never have root canals. They're literally another way to toxify the system. He pulled out that tooth, and then we put in some PRF, which is my stem cells from my own body that we did right before the procedure. We rinsed it out with ozone and basically cleaned it out. But what we did was we analyzed the tissue with a bioscanner from Germany. And when we got the report back, there was like 8 pages of pathogens that we uncovered that was in my mouth. It was insane. And guess what? It ranks them. Like this is a 1, which is like, that's high priority. This is like a 3, not as priority. There was 3 different forms of mold in my mouth. And I'm like, what? Like mold? Where did mold come from? And that's when I started like going deeper, and I'm like, all right, I got to investigate this. I'm going to test my body. So I did a urine test from a company called Great Plains Laboratory, and there it was, 3 high-level forms of mold in my body. Like, this is crazy. So then I tested my son. He had 3 high levels. I tested my wife and daughter. They had 1. Again, we were more susceptible to it. So then I'm like, all right, we have been exposed to mold. Clearly, this is coming from the house. Even our dog Sprout had mold. And he was the first symptomatic one, which is crazy. Poor Sprout. We get there and like a month in, he starts like biting his paws, like all night long. He's biting his paws. We're like, this is crazy. We're putting like we're getting like a glass like this with apple cider vinegar. We're putting his paws in there. He hated it. We couldn't figure it out. It all came full circle when we did his blood test, and it had high levels of aspergillus fungus, which is a mold, right? So anyway, I tested the house with, there's this great company. It's a very inexpensive way if you want to get a high level look if there's mold in the house. It's called Envirobiomics. They have a bunch of different kits that they can send you. And I'm not connected to the company. It's just something everyone should know about this, because believe it or not, like 70% of homes actually have mold, and you don't have to be
I live in an apartment complex, so I know that I'm getting it from all angles. There's like,
oh yeah,
I just know, and I'm definitely not going to turn my camera around and show you all the electrical towers that are in front of me. Trust me, I'm fully aware. Like, there's only so much I can do. I'm just going to keep my windows open. No toxins in the house. That's fine.
And I love that what you just said, is that it's about finding your balance. There's we are more toxic than we've ever been in human history. And like, yes, you have that outside your home, right? But there's things that we can do to make our home safer.
Yeah.
We have things that block EMF, electromagnetic frequency. I have it right over there. So basically, my whole house is covered because again, EMFs. But you can't see them. If they could go through that concrete wall, guess what? They're going to your body. They're going to affect your
Yeah.
brain. So like, there's so many different things that we can do, not just to biohack our body and strengthen our body, so we have more resilience and more strength,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also the same thing for our environment. Like, what can we do to make our environment stronger? Because there's always going to be
Yeah.
toxins that surround us. So we tested the house with this
Yeah.
Swifter. It's easy. You do like 10 different areas of the home. And literally within a week, I got the report back 24 out of 25 high level molds. And by the way, like I live in Florida now, which is like a very moist,
Yeah.
humid, which breeds mold, but mold is everywhere. It's in California. It's in like so many New York City apartments because the
It's
most common
old.
way we get mold is water leaks, like old water damage. You can
Yeah.
have a leak for literally 24 hours. That's all the mold needs. It
Mm-hmm.
needs basically a water source, a leak. It needs oxygen, and then it needs something to eat, like the drywall or whatever that might be. So the good
So
news was
yeah.
I didn't have cancer. Like, I'm not gonna die, though I thought I was. I mean, Eliza, there was moments where I was so sick, like I couldn't. My memory got so affected by this. Like I was having an interview, and the person asked me a question. I couldn't even remember the question. I had to write it down. It was insane.
Uh,
But like when I realized that this was mold toxicity, I actually became relieved because it's like, you know what? Mold is nasty. It's a beast.
but you can fix it.
But we can fix it, and I'll never forget a year later, I'm standing right before we moved to Florida. I'm at Laguna Beach, and my wife snapped this picture. This was not like a post picture. She snapped this picture. I'm literally like this in the water. I'm looking up at the sun,
Hands
my
up to
eyes
Jesus.
closed, hands up to Jesus. Yes, and I'm telling you, that was a big part of my healing, which was I I,
Mm.
I lost my faith over the years because New York City just beat me down. But I found God again, and
Oh,
I found my
wow.
faith again, and I just surrendered. Like I was at such a low point. I'm like, God, please bring. I learned that many times in my life. I just asked. I reached out to God when I needed something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the right approach. So I learned so many lessons through this, but I surrendered and I let go and I let God and I found my faith. And I believe that God brought me so many things. He brought people into my life that helped me heal, from different forms of IVs to different experts. He gave me the information that I needed to, and I think on a deeper source, I believe that I went through this so that I can help other people on a much deeper level.
Yeah.
And now that's what I'm doing. I'm helping people with not only mold toxicity, but the core of what I do now is what I call GutFitness. And there's nothing more important to the health of your body. You've got to start with the gut. So many downstream issues that my clients are going with or having, whether it's thyroid issues or skin problems or weight gain or
Yeah.
reproductive issues, you got to look to the gut. And so she snaps this picture. I'm like this, and it was an amazing moment because I hear my little ones like giggling, like the kids laugh, like they're laughing, playing in the water. And I'm saying to myself, thank you, God. Like I made it to the other side. Like
Mm.
I'm better. I'm healed. I wasn't 100%, but I wasn't even
Mm.
close to where I was. And,
Sure.
so now
Oh.
here I am in Naples, and this just took my mission, which was my lifelong addiction to sugar. My dad going through his esophageal cancer from a silent reflux that I didn't know about because I didn't know what the clues were back then. And now this is the core of what I do.
And I do have to ask, did your son make a full recovery? Is he still making a recovery? Is that something that you could notice pretty quickly after you got rid of some of the mold and you figured that out?
Yeah, so again, like I'm consulting all these different doctors, and they all have their opinions. I was very grateful for that, but like when I discovered the mold and this possibility of a strep infection, because Pan's panda can cause neurologic tics, which is so often diagnosed as Tourette syndrome, which breaks my heart because so many children are literally given
Mm.
psychotropic drugs and antibiotics and steroids, and literally that's their life for the rest
That's
of their
really
life.
interesting. And this is, I think that is something that I think a lot of people should listen to twice, is that if you have someone around you who you think has been misdiagnosed or you think it has just been blanket diagnosed in any way,
Yeah,
I'm not saying that diagnosis is wrong by any means, but I'm also saying, again, think outside the box. Or if you want a second opinion, if this is impacting your life on a daily basis, your people's lives, people that you love, then maybe this is something to look into, as excuse me, the Pants Panda situation. And I do want to get back to, you mentioned you mentioned GutFitness. So I hear you speak a lot about GutFitness. So what is GutFitness and why is it important? And can you give us some examples of what your clients are doing and
Sure.
presenting?
Yeah, and just to finish that story up with my
Oh,
son,
sure. Oh,
no, and this is gut fitness, by the way. Like what I'm going to
yeah.
tell you right now, because this was all a gut problem. Like my issue was a gut problem. My dad's esophageal cancer came from his gut. My son's neurologic tics came from his gut. And to your point, if you're dealing with a personal health issue or a loved one or a friend, and you're not getting the results, it just means that you haven't found the cause. So
Yeah.
keep on going. Test, don't guess. That's my mantra. And that's what I did with my son.
Mm,
So like I couldn't figure it out. And I just did what I did. Like I tested his gut. I did a DNA stool sample test of his gut. It's called the GI map. It's one of two tests that I start with every client with, no matter what. And Eliza, get the results back. Boom, there it was. High level strep infection. I'm like, this is crazy. I'm like, so again, I'm like,
you've got to be your own
we,
advocate.
we, we got the cause. So yeah, so I put him on one of my gut protocols, which was a great spore-based probiotic. Got him on greens and minerals to alkalize his gut because obviously in that situation the gut becomes very acidic. Digestive enzymes, and then we went on some antimicrobials, like not an antibiotic, which will kill the gut. An
Yeah.
antibiotic will wipe out your gut for 2 years. It's like a napalm bomb. We put him on an antimicrobial like olive leaf. We did a biofilm disruptor, biocide, and most important, we put them on binders, because binders, when you start to kill off these pathogens, it's like you have these dead pathogens in there, but you've got to
You
get them
got
out
to
of the
get them
body.
out.
So yeah, so these binders bind onto it and they're escorted out of the body. So
I think of the
literally, like,
binders as like suitcases that you like everything's just strewn about, but suitcases where you just escort all of the toxins out.
love that,
Okay.
love that analogy. And like within 2 weeks, he he wasn't better, but he wasn't worse because he was getting worse. And
Mm,
then within a few weeks after that, like less intensity, less frequency. Fast forward 5.5 months, ticks 100% gone.
amazing. I really wanted to hear
Amazing.
about, I wanted to hear that success story. I did,
Yeah.
especially for him at such a developmental age. And he's like trying to socialize and trying to hide things and not feeling like himself. And had this is such a testament to a parent being an advocate because you were very self-aware. You said, I'm blind by bias and this is my
Yeah.
son. I'm so emotionally attached. I can imagine there would be a lot of panic, like immediately trying all of these different cycles, like, oh, we're gonna go get colonics, we're gonna go do all these things.
Right.
We're gonna put him under more stress during this time. So a really, really admirable thing to do as a father. So you're saying
Thank you.
gut,
And we're
yeah,
so quick to do that because we want to feel better. I want him. Like I would have traded anything. I give that to me. I'll take that on. But like you can't throw darts in the dark. Like that's the worst thing we
sure.
can do because then you can actually make the body worse because the body requires energy to heal. So if I'm busy battling mold and a strep infection, like there's only so much energy that the body has. So if I start dumping all this other stuff in because I'm just like kind of guessing this could help him, then that actually may require more energy to heal. So that's why we got to test, don't guess, know what we're dealing with. And once you know what that cause is, then you can hone in, laser focus, create a very specific protocol that's going to do exactly what you need it to do, which is get to that root.
Well, here's something to go along with that. And then I do want to get some examples of GutFitness and the major things that your clients are presenting. But when people ask about testing, we've done a lot of episodes on hormone panels and the Dutch test and all of these larger hormone face focus because we do have a largely female audience. But
Yeah.
when we're looking at a general lack of energy, brain fog, constant infection, high proclivity towards sugars and things like that. When it's such a blanket statement and we just feel unwell, do you think that it's the best situation to take a GI map test first? Or do you think that that's foundationally where you should start before potentially hormone panels that are doing all these things and or at least at the same time?
Love the question. Absolutely. A client comes to me, no matter what their symptom is, no matter what they're going through, I always start with the GI map test, number one, and number two, a food sensitivity test, an MRT test, which is not looking at are you allergic to a specific food, like peanut, like a peanut allergy. Like you'll know if you have an anaphylactic reaction.
Yeah.
It's looking at is that food creating inflammation when you consume it because you can't digest it. It could be you could be having a food sensitivity to avocado. So yeah, you have to start with that because you need to figure out like where's this inflammation coming from because hormones I see female that's the majority of my clients as well. and I see a lot of hypothyroidism, and I see lots of hormone imbalances. And that is important. We got to test that. But the problem is that the inflammation that most of the time, in fact, probably all the time, is stemming from the gut is actually manipulating your hormones. So if
Okay.
I go and I test my hormones right now, there's two problems. Number one, most doctors are testing the hormones through blood. It's better than nothing at all. But you have to understand is that 99% of your hormones are bound to protein. You're not seeing the whole picture. It's like if I want to buy this house I'm in, I'm like looking through a window this small to see what I'm buying.
Oh,
Not to mention,
interesting.
I'm taking that hormone, that blood draw at one snapshot moment. Let's say on average a 28-day cycle, I'm looking at one moment. So you mentioned the Dutch test, or there's
Yes.
a great test by
Which is so
Diagno.
specific. Yes.
Love it, because it's using and then you have the extended female hormone panel by Diagnostics, which I love
Mm.
just as much. So now we're actually measuring through saliva 11 different samples throughout the course of your 28-day cycle. So now I'm looking at the entire picture. But here's the problem, is that those hormones could be out of balance because of the inflammation in the leaky gut. So what I always want to do is see what is the inflammation, where's it coming from, what other things are going on, start to lower that process, get the gut healed, and then in 2 to 3 months, then we actually test the hormones, because now inflammation is lower, leaky gut is more healed, there's more strength in the body. So when I actually get a measurement of the hormones, I'm going to be looking at what a true hormonal deficiency or an imbalance is, not something that might have been manipulated by what's going on in the gut. And that's what all these doctors are doing. They're actually seeing the hormones out of balance, and then they're giving a drug or a medication, right, to basically put that number back into balance. So, all right, the number's back in balance. We did our job. Let's just maintain that number there. But the problem is that you didn't address the cause. All right, that fire is still raging in that body, and it's going
Yeah.
to take you out. But wait, the numbers are good. We're okay. No, it's not okay.
You got to
So
get clear imaging. Yeah.
exactly.
And let's tack on to that. With the amount of people that are saying, hey, I feel like my hormones are imbalanced, my skin, my periods are irregular, I can't get pregnant, I am gaining only lower belly fat, all of these different things that we hear, or cravings, whatever it is, tired, constipated. There is a lot of information out there.
Yes.
And especially with social media, and some of it is bomb. And I'm so happy to have you on the podcast, because that's what we want to do. We started this podcast with talking about gut health and stool and how to stay regular and all of the lifestyle environments, but this is a more medical, practical type of conversation. So when you are seeing your patients, there are a lot of people who self-diagnose.
Yeah.
What is the difference between a real issue that you think needs to, and again, I know this is subjective, what do you think is the difference between normal digestion issues and serious gut health problems?
Well, there's no such thing as like a normal
Yes.
bad digestive issue, right?
But what
So
I'm saying is,
yeah,
oh, well, I had a meal and I'm so bloated.
yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, I get it. And it's a phenomenal question. Like, how do we know this is something that's just like a little mild that,
Or like dairy makes me break out type of
yeah.
situation.
So I just stopped dairy and it's going to fix it, or is it something more serious? And again, like my father was a perfect example. He had a dry cough for so many years, and I was always like, this is before I became a gut health, expert and interested in gut health. I'm like, what is that? What is that about? Like, what does he have this dry cough? And no one ever like talked about or picked up on it. And then he's literally driving down a week before I'm running the marathon with my mom. And my mom is knitting a sweater for my son, Braden, who's 6 months at the time. And she feels the car veering off. And she looks over at my father, and he is passed out against the window, driving 70 miles per hour as the car crashes into the divider as she pulls the ignition out. Now, this is crazy because he was just having a dry cough. That was it for years. But as I drive up to the hospital in Hartford, I'm thinking, okay, he had a heart attack, a stroke, maybe an aneurysm. And I get there, and the doctor's like, no, your dad has esophageal cancer. I'm like, what?
Left field.
Esophageal cancer. So like my point with the story is that cancer is always like, it's not something that you get, it's something that builds in your body.
We all have cancer cells currently.
Got it. Yeah,
yes. Okay.
Yeah, poor diet, obviously stress, toxicity. But he had a very mild symptom. It was like a silent reflux that emanated. So my point is that it's great that we have social media and things like TikTok, because we're seeing people are becoming more conscious and aware about their bodies, about symptoms. We have amazing resources right out there, but I always say your greatest resource is resourcefulness. So if you're having a symptom, it's like, don't wait for the toothache to start brushing and flossing. Like, get ahead of it. And it might be nothing, it might be something, but I don't want to guess about that. When it comes to me or my children or my patients, like, no, my mantra is test, don't guess. And if it's something is clear and it's something as mild as you just need to like take the dairy and the gluten out of your diet, which we would start already while we're
Yeah.
testing, right? So we always start with the diet. You know, I start with a food diary because again, you can't supplement your way out of a bad diet. And so many people are out there like they're getting bloating or constipation or diarrhea or whatever that might be, those gut symptoms. And then they start to take a supplement or a pill or a potion or a lotion, but they don't
Sure.
change their diet. They're still jacking up their body with sugar. They're eating gluten. And again, I call them weapons of mass destructions for the gut, right? You're having too much wheat, which is gluten-based, animal proteins that are fed with antibiotics, hormones, and corn and soy, which is our inflammatory fats,
Mm-hmm.
dairy, which you mentioned before, and then the two S's on WMD, stress and sugar, right? All those things affect us. So that's where I always start. It's like,
If
let's start by removing the things that we know are going to affect your gut in a bad way. It's going to weaken your gut. So how do we strengthen the gut? We remove those things, those foods, those triggers that are going to drive up inflammation, and we start to add into the body foods that strengthen your gut and your body from
Yeah.
the inside out.
Well, let me ask you a question that I know listeners are probably thinking, okay, this guy has the balls to just say, get rid of gluten, get rid of animal proteins, get rid of XYZ, sugar, coffee, stress. Okay, then there's a bridge. Might as well just bye-bye. So, in the hierarchy of inflammation, if we are talking about reduction, because I also don't want people to feel overwhelmed. Oh, got to get rid of
Yes.
this, got to get rid of this.
Yes.
Like, let's be realistic here. What are also, by the way, in 4 minutes, I'm going to have to send you a new link because I haven't updated Zoom.
No worries.
Anyways, we have 4 minutes.
Okay.
In the hierarchy of gluten, sugar, caffeine, stress, sleep, what if you top 5 order of importance, one being the most important, what would you say to reduce first?
Oh, that's such a great question. And I love that you said that because ultimately it's about finding your balance. You know, that's what I love about Kelly Ripa. She's like 80-20, 80-20,
Yeah.
like 80% of what you do has to create strength in your body. And then you
Like
have a
I
little
got chocolate
leeway.
in the fridge, but I got 20 crystals in front of me. You know, things
Yeah,
are
exactly.
things.
And then the chocolate in the fridge, like my whole philosophy is like, I'm not saying like don't have chocolate. I love chocolate. Who doesn't love chocolate? But let's use my never better best approach. And we'll get to those 5 things in a second, but this is so important, which is never better best. So like, let's not have milk chocolate because obviously dairy has sugar and we shouldn't be eating dairy. We're the only mammals that consume another mammal's breast milk after weaning. So that's
Mm,
something we shouldn't do, right? Let's have something better. That would be like 100% dark chocolate. What's the best option would be something like raw cacao. It's unrefined, it's high in minerals. So that's my whole
it
approach, which is
doesn't
like, it's not
taste
a,
great by itself, though.
what's that?
I don't love the way it tastes by itself, though.
Yeah, you
I do
may
an
or may not.
85%. I do an
Yeah, and that's
85%.
and that's my whole point, which is find
Okay,
what
okay,
works for you. But like
okay.
what I'm saying is that you can't do the milk chocolate. You can do the milk chocolate, but like if you're gonna do the milk chocolate, that's part of the 20%.
Got
Then
it.
everything else, because it's all about how you neutralize the effects of what you put into the body. It's about if I'm having milk chocolate, that's going to create a lot of acid in my body.
Yes.
So I need to neutralize the effects of that acid. What neutralizes that is minerals, right? Magnesium and potassium. So that's the
Yes.
whole point. Find your balance. It's not about giving up. I was addicted to sugar so hardcore, and for years I tried to beat it by deprivation. But sugar is
Yes.
not a food; it's a drug. It's become America's drug of choice. It
Good
literally
point.
jacks up your brain. It's 8 times more addicted than cocaine. So when I tried to give it up, Eliza, it's like, okay, 2 weeks, honeymoon phase is over. I'm back like
It's
with
a
a
binge.
vengeance.
It's a
It's
binge.
it,
Yeah.
it's a binge. It's not a lifestyle. So
Yeah.
for me, I finally beat sugar, and this is what led to my book, Get Off Your Sugar, by adding in foods that help the body, that strengthen the body. And what happens over time, the good outweighs the bad because your taste buds change every 14 days. And you
Yes.
need more of that drug just to keep you neutral. So I need more and more sugar just to keep that high neutral. So as we start to put more food, like when I start like one of my detoxes in the beginning, if I'm like putting lots of sugar in my body, the salad, it's like, oh man, the salad's awful. But by day 14, like, man, that is the best tasting salad ever. Not because like I just like starve myself and that's all I have. It's my taste
Your
buds
taste buds
changed.
change.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think number one on the list is stress. There's no doubt. All right.
Stress. Got it.
Because stress again shuts if there's like I live in Naples, we had a hurricane a few months ago. When you have a hurricane, you're not going to remodel your kitchen. All right. And what I mean by that is that when you're stressed, you go into fight or flight, your body can't go inwards and focus on growth and repair. Your body doesn't care about digesting its food, doesn't care about your immune system. All it cares about is getting out of danger. So we have to manage stress better. And unfortunately, right now, stress is managing us. So that could be meditating. You know, I love Brain Tap, Dr. Patrick Porter, very dear friend of mine. I love Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza, his meditations. Yeah, there you
He's
go.
amazing. I'm just, oh, he's the best.
Amazing, amazing. So it's about going inwards and helping the body. So stress is the big one, but like that is not like a quick change. So I think from like
Yeah.
quick action steps, I think the most damaging to your gut is definitely the gluten. You
Okay.
know,
Okay.
gluten, and it's not just about like gluten free, because when you go gluten free, it's like
Processed.
it's processed. They put sugar in because the food tastes like cardboard without the gluten. So now they got to make it taste better. Now they're actually putting all the sugar and artificial sweeteners in. So you got to really look at that, number one. So stress is big. Obviously, gluten is big. You know, it's like processed sugar, refined foods, like the carbs, like sugar, gluten, sugar, and omega-6 fats. Like those are the three big ones, right?
Gluten,
So
sugar,
like
omega-6 fats. You all know that I'm not a big pre-workout girl. I like to have my coffee in the morning with a bit of protein and some cinnamon, and I'll put my Organifi, a little bit of protein in the coffee just to make sure that I'm not spiking blood sugar levels and I'm feeling balanced and it's not too much on my gut. But over the past week or so, it's not that I've been super tired during my workouts, but I've really been excited and I wanted to have an extra level of precision, if you will. And I really do believe that incorporating the peak power, the energizing blend from Organifi has been a game changer for me. I will say, I had one of the best leg workouts with hip thrusts, heavy hip thrusts. Heavy for me. Heavy hip thrusts, lots of glute work, some sprints, just an overall badass feeling workout. And if you are interested in having that type of workout, then why not supplement with something that is a high performance energy drink, but also not having a bunch of those added BS flavors, anything that tastes too harsh? You want to have some really high quality ingredients in there. So the Peak Power product from Organifi is a potent energizing blend that supports mental focus and premium hydration without negative side effects. This refreshing lemon lime drink will help you keep your performance at its peak every day. This is something I actually only did half of a scoop because I'm sensitive to caffeine, and I will say typically pre-workouts have in the past made me jittery. Some people say it makes them itchy. This does not have any of those extra ridiculous ingredients that you can't pronounce that make you feel weird. This is all clean, glyphosate residue free, friendly, awesome ingredients. And like I said, I do trust the Organifi products like they are my flesh and blood. I love these products, and I said, let me give it a try. I tried it for about a week, and I did it during the follicular phase of my cycle so that it wasn't super messing with my hormones. I was already having good natural energy, but I did feel that this gave me more precision and helped me stay a little bit more clear and focused during my workout. Normally I'm, bouncing off the walls like a squirrel, doing all these different things and then cutting reps short because I'm getting bored. This one gave me a little bit more of an intense focus, but without a crash afterwards. Again, this is the Peak Power. You can you can check it out on my Organifi shop page. You can go to Organifi.com/HTH and get 20% off if you have been looking for a pre-workout, or if you don't love coffee in the morning and it makes you go to the bathroom before your workout. Maybe give this a try. It's the Peak Power. You can get 20% off using code HTH at Organifi.com/HTH. Thank you so much, Organifi, for being the best sponsor of the Hotter Than Health podcast. Threes. Or omega-6s. Okay, so there's omega-6s and omega-3s. Omega-6s aren't always bad, but we get more of them. Is that right? With the ratios are off?
Yeah, omega-6s are way worse to your body than sugar, because your body will burn off the sugar because it wants to get rid of it, but it can't get rid of the omega-6 fats that has a half-life of 7 years. So you got to remember, there's fats that heal and there's fats that kill. So omega-3 fats like salmon, fish oil, those are fats that heal your body because they're anti-inflammatory. Omega-6s are the fats that kill because they're pro-inflammatory. Now, we need omega-6s because, and it should be a 1-to-1 ratio, like, right? Like we don't want too many omega-6s. Well, if omega-6s are bad, they create inflammation. Why do we want them at all in our body? Because if I cut my finger, inflammation is what's going to heal that cut. If we don't have
Yes.
inflammation, you don't heal. But if that is chronic inflammation, then that will kill you. So that ratio of omega-3s to omega-6s should be 1-to-1. It should be
Okay.
no more than 3-to-1 omega-6s to 3. The average American pre-pandemic was 19-to-1. Post-pandemic, 25-to-1. Now there's a kit on my website. It's amazing. It's called the omega-3 acid inflammation test kit. Well, actually, I have it right here. So funny. Where we send this kit to our patients. They prick their finger at home, put the drop of blood right on the card, send it to the lab, and in 12 days, you'll know exactly what your ratio is.
What
Eliza,
is,
I've tested.
sorry,
Yeah,
go
go on.
ahead.
No, I was saying I tested clients who were 50-to-1. I had this one client. She was back when I was practicing in New York City. She lived in Connecticut and has seen like every doctor. She was suffering with serious depression. My heart broke for her. She was on like 4 or 5 different medications and like saw every specialist. Like, we've been to everybody. We've done everything. Well, did they test your omega-3, omega-6 ratio? Because that is one of the prime causes of inflammation of the brain, right?
Oh,
Inflammation of
okay.
the
Yes,
brain
yes.
triggers anxiety and depression. So the big 2 causes of inflammation of the brain is too many omega-6 fats, but also leaky gut, right? So we measured her omega-3 6 ratio, and get this, it was 88-to-1. That means she had 88 times more of these damaging inflammatory fats. And here's the problem is that your brain is 60% fat. So the fats compete for the same enzymes. If you have 88 times more of these bad guys than the good guys, who's going to win? The bad guys. And it was making her brain so chemically whacked out that not only could she not think straight, she had poor memory, poor focus, poor attention, but it was also driving the depression. So the good news was,
what is the diet or the lifestyle of someone that would test for 50 plus to
yeah,
1? And also, is it just diet, or is it because they have leaky gut that the good ones are getting out and they might be they might have this perfect diet? Or what would a healthy-ish lifestyle look like
yeah.
that you would want?
Yeah, leaky gut is going to accelerate the cause, right? So like leaky gut becomes the gasoline on the fire. Leaky gut is the cause of all disease, and low stomach acid. So that's definitely a big problem. But
I want to talk about that afterwards. Put a pin in that
sure.
one. Yes.
Yeah. So just having these omega-6s, which are so prevalent in our diet. Well, what are omega-6 fats? Like we already said, omega-3s are like salmon and like the DHA that comes from like
Walnuts.
a yolk of an egg, walnuts, chia seeds, things like that. But I'm a plant-based guy, but like when you get your omega-3s from plant-based sources, the challenge or problem is they don't convert well to the omega-3s that I would get from having a piece of wild-caught salmon or fish oil. So
So
those
that's something you
omega-3s
would
are,
supplement.
yeah. So there's
Got it.
5 supplements that everybody needs to take, no matter what's going on, no matter how healthy or sick, your kids and elderly alike. There's 5 supplements, and we can go over these later if you want. But one of them is omega-3 fatty acids, fish oil.
Got
We
it.
are so deficient. That and magnesium are 2 of the biggest deficiencies that I see with my clients, in fact, in the Western Hemisphere. And why do we need omega-3s? It's not only for lowering inflammation, it's to optimize brain function, it's for brain health. And there's research showing that when you are omega-3 deficient, there are literally 96,000 preventable deaths that happen every year just from omega-3 deficiency. So we got to get omega-3s. You got to get a good quality source, wild caught. All right. I know it's a little bit more expensive, but go to your farmers markets. There's great ways to actually find more affordable sources of these omega-3 fats.
There was a brand that I really, really liked that was recommended to me. It was called Rosita, and they have a really, really nice, high quality cold water fish omega. So look that up. I don't think I'm
Thank
crazy because
you.
I really trust that person, but Rosita, and they also do a discount on subscription. I'm not, this Hotter Than Health is not sponsored by them, but I have heard.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in that, Rosita would be a good one. And maybe
Thank you. I'm gonna check that out. I love that. It's like we're always gonna give things that we use for our lives and our families, and that's
Yeah.
so important because again, we need these resources. Now, omega-6s,
Where are
those
they
come
found?
from, they come from anything that you buy in the store that's like packaged. I went to the store the other day, Sprouts, and I just love to just start shooting videos. People like think I'm nuts, number one, and then all of
Like,
a
who
sudden you
does
have
he
like
think he is?
you have a crowd behind you. So I'm talking about like salad dressings, right? So I go to salad dressings and I start basically showing every salad dressing. The number one ingredient, soybean oil. So it's soybean oil, corn oil, cottonseed oil, canola oil. The worst omega-6 fat is grapeseed oil, which a lot of people use for cooking. It's got 954 times more omega-6s compared to omega-3s. So this is the problem. Most most boxes, most packaged stuff that you find in the store is going to have some form of one of these inflammatory oils. It's in
Or
there.
restaurants cook with it. So
They all
even
do.
when you go out to a restaurant and you order a kale salad with grilled chicken on it, the grilled chicken might have the soybean oil
Yeah,
or the
yeah.
grapeseed oil. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. So like, you're not crazy. Like when I go to restaurants, it's just like, I'll ask those questions. It's like, is this wild? If it's wild caught, it's going to say it on the menu. Because if I'm like a chef and I'm spending extra money because I want to deliver a higher premium product, I'm gonna advertise that, right?
Yeah.
Um, the worst fish that you can have is like grouper or swordfish because it's a larger fish.
Wait, I thought
So
that grouper was one of the lowest mercury fishes because it grows so fast that it spends less time in the water absorbing.
I'm not only talking about mercury, I'm also talking about metastatic tumors.
Ah,
Yeah, and swordfish very so. Yeah, it just bioaccumulates it because it's higher up on the food chain. So you want to go for more like omega-3 fish, wild fish like trout, salmon, herring, sardines, anchovies, things like that. And they're
great.
definitely going to be safer. But like the source is critical because if it's not wild caught, then it's a frankenfish. It's like fed with all this insane stuff. Like they literally will put dye in the salmon to make it look pink. Like
Yes,
it's
you can look on
crazy.
the back of the smoked salmon packaging and it'll say,
Yeah.
salmon preservative, citric acid, and then it will say food like red color. It's pretty
Yeah,
crazy.
so we got to become conscious label readers. And I interviewed a doctor for my first book, Get Off Your Acid. His name is Dr. Joseph Hibbelin. And this is crazy. He actually did studies on murderers and people in insane asylums. And aside from psychotropic drugs, which is definitely always an issue with some of these, he measured their omega-6, omega-3 ratio. And the average omega-6-3 ratio in these people that were doing horrific things was 70-1. And what he was saying is
Holy
that
shit.
their omega-6s were so high and out of balance that it literally was inflaming their brain and making their brain so whacked that they couldn't make rational decisions. So here, this patient of mine, Melissa, is 88-1. We do the test, we find it out. I put her on high dose omega-3 fish oil, clean up her diet a bit. 4 months later, she's off of I think it was 4 medications, off of all 4 medications. Depression is gone. She's literally like a newfound person again. And I think on the retest, because I always retest between 3 and 4 months, it was under 10-1. And then eventually a few months later, we got it under 3-1. But
Unreal.
it's unreal. It's unreal. And like, this is the stuff that we have to look for. So
I
we don't
really
want to
want to take
over,
this test now. I really want to take this test because
yeah,
I do
we'll
try really hard, but I would love to know.
I'll get you set up with it. It's an amazing test. And that's like,
Thank
again,
you.
my mantra, which is like test, don't guess. So like every year there's a certain test like that we should be doing. We should test our gut with a GI map. All right. We should do a food sensitivity test. We should do an omega-3 test, and we should do a comprehensive blood panel. Like those 4 things. It's not a huge amount.
But it is to someone
And
who isn't you. It
yeah, well,
it seems like that does coming from someone who is, I would say, in between the,
yeah,
I'm not psychotic about it, but I'm so interested in it. It is my livelihood. But the layperson is not going to say, "Oh yeah,
yes,
it's January 1st, time to go get my
right.
comprehensive blood panel and all of these things." I feel fine, but I just go in for fun. That's not necessarily, but I do
If
think that people should start with the GI. I
if
would
I'm
agree.
20 years old, I'm not doing anything. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
when are we motivated? We're motivated to actually do something when we actually have a pain that's bigger than the actual pleasures that we're experiencing. So when pain gets to that high level, like you'll do anything, right? So it's a great valid point. So it all depends on where we're at, But
Yeah.
again, like if I'm dealing with a health concern and like I want to really start to like figure this out, like those are 4 tests. Now, if someone says, I just can't do those tests, like what are the 2 most important tests? GI map, MRT. You got to start with those 2. And then if someone's not going to do those, what do we do? All right. What I do is I start with the diet, like always, no matter what. So we start with a strength eating diet. Start to put foods in your body that strengthen you from the inside out. You got to think more green juices, more green smoothies, green soups, more salads, green, stir fries and like steamed vegetables, because the greens are the core of what I call a strength eating diet. Why are they so important? Because they're loaded with chlorophyll. Chlorophyll and the minerals in there, it's the most powerful nutrient for the body.
Yes.
So that's where we start. So I just say, let's add more of that into your diet. All right. You're eating some of these bad fats. Let's start to increase more of these healthy fats. Let's have an avocado for breakfast. Let's put some broccoli sprouts on that. You can have a grass-fed egg, that's cooked in grass-fed butter or some coconut oil. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's a healthy breakfast that the average person is going to be fine with, right?
Totally.
Drizzle a little olive oil on top of that. Like, that's what
Mm-hmm.
I call a strength eating breakfast. Or you can have a smoothie. Like, so again, start with a
So,
diet.
yeah. Okay. So, like prioritizing whole foods, bare minimum. And then we did talk a little bit about, and I do want to get into supplementation and I do want to get into leaky gut. But one question I did have first was, and I know that this might be specific to me, but I do know that there are a lot of people who do listen to this podcast who are interested in upgrading their life. Like they're really trying to get to that next level. Maybe they've been working out more. Maybe they are dating or single, or it's summertime, and alcohol is a big factor in social settings, in lifestyle, in everything. What are your thoughts on alcohol's effect on the gut?
Well, number one, it's not about deprivation; it's about moderation, right? So I'll never say give. Like, I enjoy a couple of drinks on the weekend, but
Sure.
again,
That's yeah.
it's that good, better, best philosophy. But alcohol is heavily acidic. It's a gut destroyer. It's another one of those weapons of mass destruction. But it's about, again, finding your balance. If I have a glass of red wine and that actually takes stress out of my life at the end of the day on a Friday, right? I think the positive of that outweighs probably the negative fact that this is actually very
Sure.
safe to your body,
But if
depending on
you're
what you have
staying
going
out
on.
till 2 a.m., taking shots, ripping shots every 10 minutes, and then drinking pina coladas, and there's sugar and there's all this stuff, and then it affects your sleep, and then you're even more stressed the next day. I think you're so right about the balance.
Yeah, and like when it comes to alcohol, like anytime I post the alcohol post, it always gets the most hits. It's so funny. So like, what would be the worst alcohol? Beer. Why? Because it's a fermented grain, right? Grains are one of those things that we just want to try to eliminate out of the diet. So instead of having something like brown rice or white rice, a better option would be like quinoa or wild rice. Quinoa is a seed, wild rice is a grass. So like that, it's the same thing with alcohol. So if I'm going for vodka, instead of having a grain vodka, you want to have a grain-free vodka, like a Ciroc or Shiraz, right? Tequila would be a better option. And then what are you putting that alcohol in? Right? Are you putting that alcohol in, Coca-Cola or soda, or are you putting that? So again, it's like it's about really what you're going to have, finding a better version of that alcohol, but still know that alcohol is going to hurt your gut. So what I have all my clients do is, before you're going to indulge, have a glass of minerals. Like, get a scoop of my minerals and put that in the water, mix up and drink that, because minerals are going to neutralize the acidity that is coming.
Oh, I
So
gotta try your
it's,
minerals. I gotta write that down. I gotta write
yeah, the
that down.
minerals are amazing, and it's another way to prevent a hangover. It's like, if you're going to have a few cocktails, the reason why you're hungover is not only dehydration, but it's could be the sugar in the alcohol, but also the acidity and the inflammation that results from what you drink. So I literally will have them drink a minerals right before they go out, and then have a minerals when they get back, and it's easy. You get like this amount of water, and then you just
Like
get
half a cup of water.
you just get like a scoop of like minerals. It's like this small, like
Oh,
this.
we start from the very beginning. I have used your minerals. I have a friend who is obsessed with your minerals, and I did
No way.
not. I for some reason, it did not occur to me until I saw your branding. I can't wait. I can't. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I
So
have some
you
friends
got
who are going to
it.
be very excited about this. You'd make a fantastic product.
Oh my
You,
God, thank you so
you.
much. Thank
Before
you.
I even booked with you, I loved this, and we put it in our coffee every single morning. And
Acid
I
kicking
was like,
coffee. Yeah.
eh, mhm,
It's
I will be
and
ordering.
this is what it's all about. So send me your address. I'll send you all of our supplements. So
Remind
you
me to
can
get
enjoy
your
them.
email.
Yes, I'll give it to you at the end. But again, it's like, coffee is acidic. Coffee is a liver suppressor. Coffee is an adrenal suppressor. And up until 2014, I was telling all my patients, don't drink coffee. And they're like, okay, all right, Dr. Daryl, whatever. Yeah, boom, coffee, coffee, coffee. I was
A
no coffee
crazy
drinker.
person. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Kelly Ripa, when she came to me, she went on her show like a week later, and she's like, this changed my life. And I swear, what he did is responsible for me not being in pain, and blah, blah, blah. And
Holy
I'm
testimonial.
still drinking my coffee, but I didn't tell him. And like, when she said that, I'm like, ding, 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 like, duh. It's not about removing something that I love. 85% of people drink coffee. It's about how we can neutralize the effects that that coffee is doing to the body, right? Because again, there's a lot of upside to coffee, Eliza, but the one big downside is coffee is loaded with acid. Acid equals
Yes.
inflammation, and inflammation is going to take you out. We don't die of old age, we die of inflammation. So it literally took me 5 years to create that product, acid kicking coffee, which is the powder you add to the coffee. And what it does is it neutralizes all the acid in the coffee. So now you do get that upside of coffee because there are benefits, but now it's minus the downside. So
And
that's
it's
how.
better for your teeth.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Which is what we're all looking for.
Yes.
Okay. I have decided we are going to need a part 2. There's no question. There's too much. There is just too much goodness. And I know
Happy
you're
to.
so busy, but we're definitely going to need to do a part 2. Can you touch on leaky gut? What are 2 things that we can do immediately to reduce if we think leaky gut might be in our world?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell everybody that everyone has leaky gut. Now, some people have small amounts of leaky gut. Some people have high amounts of leaky gut. If you're having any skin issues like acne or dermatitis or rosacea or psoriasis, all right, that's not a skin problem. It's a leaky gut problem, right? Your
Yes.
skin is the largest detox organ of the body, and anything that comes out through the skin, it emanates from the gut.
What
Hippocrates
about
said,
the
look to.
like bumps on the back of my arms? This has been since I was a baby. They're not bad and they go away often, but like I think about it. Is that something that
I would say that it most likely is. I don't want to say like 100% this is because
sure.
there's always varying factors. But when does leaky gut start? It starts with the birth process. What things like sugar, gluten, and artificial sweeteners and dairy, like they like poke holes in your gut. But an antibiotic is like a napalm bomb. Like you have your gut, and then they're like, what is leaky gut? You have your gut, and then there's your blood, and there's a big dam that sits in between. That's your intestinal wall, and they should be like very tight junctions. And what happens is when we eat, the job of the gut is to take in the nutrients that are good, bring it into the body so we can use that for energy and fuel and get all the bad stuff out. When we have leaky gut, those tight junctions become semi-permeable, and now things that shouldn't get into the blood and the body now get in. Things like undigested food and protein, yeast, fungus, mold, toxins, like all that stuff. It gets into the body, and then now your body's got to deal with it. It affects your blood, the brain, and now it starts to come out through the skin. So lymphatic drainage is one thing that you need to do. I think it would be very important for like a dry skin brush,
So
bouncing
I
on a
dry brush
rebounder.
all the time. Oh, okay. I got a trampoline. Got it.
Those are going to help free up the lymphatic system. But again,
Okay.
what I would probably most likely tell you is that this is a leaky gut issue, right? Because when there's leaky gut, which everybody has, because what's the first thing? If we're born in a hospital, mom is given antibiotics always. All right. And antibiotics destroys the gut. This is how when I was
And then we
my
were
daughter
breastfed.
Leah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, my daughter Leah was 3 months old, and she had this like little issue when she was born on her. I think it was her left eye. Was like it was a little like a little lag, like lid lag, and she was always tearing. I'm like, what's going on? So I'm adjusting her. I'm a chiropractor. I'm adjusting her. But like me and my wife, are like let's check her blood. So we go to my office, and I do what's called the live blood cell test as well. It's where you take a drop of blood from the fingertip, and then you put that blood under a microscope. I magnified it about 25,000 times, and we're looking at your alive blood in real time.
Cool.
It's the most powerful test you can ever see because it's looking at the quality of your blood. So here we are in my office with my daughter, and I'm like, I got to prick her finger. So I'm like, Chelsea, you're her mom. You prick her finger. She's like, you're the doctor. You prick her finger. I'm like, I'm not doing it. So we're getting in a fight. Half hour later, I prick. She's asleep. I actually poke a little thing in her heel. I get the blood out, and I find candida in her blood. You should never have candida in the blood. We do have candida in the gut, all right, because candida breaks down things that don't belong there. You shouldn't have too much candida. Candida feeds sugar. I'm sorry, sugar feeds candida. So how does she have candida in her blood at 3 months old? Leaky gut. Well, how does a 3-month-old get leaky gut? Antibiotics in mom from the birth process. So it starts then. That's probably why you have something for so many years. And if the leaky gut's not
And it makes sense. My
corrected,
sister does too. And we had the same birth process, breastfed. Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So what do we do for leaky gut? I think number one, like we got to take a good probiotic. We get one millionth the amount of probiotics that our ancestors used to get. Yeah, it's good to have like fermented foods like sauerkraut and kimchi. Please avoid kombucha. Don't drink kombucha. It is so acidic to the body. It is loaded with yeast. It actually is fermentating so much it actually becomes alcohol, and they're actually considering.
I was gonna say, I can tell if I take a little, if I drink like an apple cider vinegar kombucha drink, I can because I rarely drink alcohol, so I feel everything. It really does
Good for
give
you.
me the little bit of, I can tell. I can definitely
Yeah, and
tell.
apple cider vinegar I love. Like that form of vinegar is okay, but all other vinegars we want to really avoid because they're high in yeast. But again, like apple cider vinegar is so important because it's going to actually stimulate the production of acid in the stomach,
Mm.
which this is a whole nother topic because this gets into reflux. But I am going to tell everybody right now, Hippocrates said the cause of all disease is gut. Yes. All right. Leaky gut. Yes. But let's take that one step further. Hypochlorhydria. It's a fancy word, which means low stomach acid. As we get older, we don't get stronger, we get weaker, we don't get faster, we get slower, we don't produce more acid in the stomach, we produce less acid, right? So when I say get off your acid, I'm talking about like the toxins in the body and the tissues, the inflammation. I'm
Like we
not
need
talking
some
about the
acid.
stomach.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need stomach acid. And that's the number one cause. Contrary to our beliefs, the biggest misconception that people have about gut health is that acid reflux is caused by too much acid in the stomach. It's not, it's too little acid. But the biggest issue with that is that as we have low acid, now we're not digesting our food, right? You're not what you eat, you're what you digest, absorb, and assimilate. So now we're not getting nutrients into the cells of the body, we're getting food sensitivities. And most important, that acid is the first line of defense to kill off any bad guys coming in from the water that we drink, from the air that we're breathing, from the food. And if we have low acid, it goes right past that acid here into the intestines. And then those stealth pathogens, like with my son and with me, they start to wreak havoc. They cause
Yes.
inflammation. They eat their way through the gut wall, and that's leaky gut, right? So we want to take a good probiotic because the probiotic means for life. Antibiotic means against life.
Yeah.
Probiotics are going to build up your good guys, the good gut army, the flowers in your garden. Look at your gut like a garden. You want lots of flowers. You don't want the weeds. There's going to be some weeds, but most people I test, the weeds are overtaking the garden. That's going to cause leaky gut. So probiotic means for life. So you can have some fermented foods, but we have to take a good probiotic. I would say start with like a spore-based probiotic. I think that's very, very important. So while we're building up the gut, we also want to avoid the foods that are destroying the gut. So obviously the big ones would be gluten and sugar.
Okay. Okay. And I do want to, I'm just putting you on full screen, but I do want to end by just saying this is so helpful. And just the fact that we are going through the names of tests, the names of labeling what may be going on, candida, the omega-3 ratios, what are the top priorities? This is the type of tangible stuff that I think our audience really, really loves. And I have to schedule with your publicist immediately after this so
Let's
that
do
I
it.
can make sure. There's no question. There's no question. And
No,
then
we definitely have to do it. And
there's just
I
so
think
much.
what we should really like dive into deeper is like, what does a strength eating diet look like? Again, like all that other stuff, because we kind of were a
This
little
is
bit
the
all over, which is
foundation.
good. Yeah, but like where do I start? You know, strength eating diet. These are the 4 macros. It's not about counting calories. We could talk about intermittent fasting, and then we can talk about like the 5 most important supplements. We could talk about some of my favorite biohacks to manage stress. Let's talk about acid reflux. I mean, like there's so much more that we can dive into. And
Maybe we'll
if you
do it
want,
every
yeah,
6 months.
we'll do it as soon as you want. I'm happy to do it as soon as you want. So we can record as soon as you want because it's gonna be awesome. And if you want to create a special like discount for you, if like any of
Or
your
can we do
tribe
it?
audience,
Yeah, can we do a code if someone wants to try your products?
we'll do a code for yeah, we'll do like a discount off of the off of their like a 20% discount off their first buy. And then if you want if people want to like actually do the gut testing, then what we can do is I'll give you also like we'll do a link and I can give your people like a big discount on that too.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, then, if you are listening, make sure you check in the link in the show notes and I'll make sure I provide that discount link for anyone who wants to try. And I'll put in a discount link for the products that I specifically have tried, which is the coffee product and then the acid kicking minerals. Absolutely love them. And they taste good. They're not weird. It's all good. I mix them in with my greens juice every single morning. Or I did when I was using them, but
Amazing.
you do some
You're
good stuff.
you're an acid kicker. I'm so impressed at how much stuff you're doing. And no, again, because that's the ultimate. It's like, you know, with your podcast, you're helping so many people, but you're also getting so much amazing information. But ultimately, it's about how you apply that, right? It's like I remember Tony Robbins, one of my friends and mentors, once said, "It's knowledge is not about power; it's potential power. Action is power." So it's like a lot of stuff
Casually,
said
Tony
today.
Robbins, my friend.
You know, like yeah, like he's a mentor of mine. I've done like every program of his, and I get
He's
it. Like
amazing.
he's like my life would be totally different if I didn't, you know, from day one, like that's where I learned about like the alkaline diet. And like my first
Mm,
green juice I ever tried was his green juice.
it's
Tasted
so
like swamp
crazy.
water, but it was amazing. It's
Yeah.
a very healthy product. But I learned so much about like going to your next level, and it's about progress, not perfection. So like, what's one thing that you heard today? It's like I said, the green juice is a core of a strength eating diet. So maybe every morning you wake up and you start with a green juice. Like, it's not about taking the sugar away. For me, that's how I did it. Like, I beat my sugar addiction in 3 weeks by adding green juice and jumping on a rebounder.
Mm,
So
mm,
it's
mm,
about like just adding,
mm.
and meet yourself where you're at. For some people, it might be adding one thing. If you're an overachiever, you might want to add 10 things. There's nothing wrong or right. It's about where you're going to be at so that you can create a lifestyle, right? Because it takes about 21 days to make it a habit. It takes 90 days to make it a lifestyle. Once you get to 6 months, you're not turning back. So we want to set ourselves up for success, not failure. And how do we do that? We stack, we add, we add, we add.
The compound effect is real. And I do hope that this episode motivates people enough to take one actionable step. What can you do today if you're listening to it at night while you're cooking dinner? Is there olive oil you could do that's not cooked, that's raw? Is there something you can replace? Hey, I'm going to the grocery store later today. Maybe I'll go get some ghee or some
Yeah.
chia seeds to add into my water. Whatever it is, I do hope that I'm positive that this is going to be full of takeaways for people. We will definitely have you on for part 1. Please make sure you all are listening into or checking on the links in the show notes so that you can get set up with a big old Mac Daddy discount that we're going to get set up with so we can all try these minerals. Especially like it's summertime, people are out on the boat, they're day drinking, they're hungover, they're all these things, but we want to stay fresh, we want to stay good. Thank you
Yeah.
so
Love
much.
that. Love that.
Where can everybody find you, Dr. Daryl, and what do you have coming up on the horizon?
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much for having me. This was awesome. And just thank you for what you're doing and helping so many other people. It's so important. And I'm excited to come back on for round 2. It's going to be
Oh,
amazing.
yeah.
But you can find me. My website is Get Off Your Acid, ACID. I got to say that slower because I'm a New Yorker. I talk fast. Acid.com. Instagram, we have 2 Instagrams, Get Off Your Acid. And then where I'm doing like, which is more of our products, my at Dr. Daryl Gioffre, DrDaryl, That's my personal Instagram where I'm just giving lots of like amazing health information. And yeah, you can DM me if you have any questions or you want to do testing. And what I have coming up on the horizon, I'm about to embark on my 3rd book, which is about gut fitness and the gut. So I'm very excited about that. I'm putting together a gut signature program, which is going to be like this amazing 8-module system. So you can at home, you can like literally like start from where you need to, and then literally start to stack all these things that we're talking about. So it's a
Amazing.
really easy, digestible, no pun intended, program that's going to really help you take your gut fitness to the next level. So we're doing that, and we're working on a couple of products. We're going to launch a magnesium product in about 8 weeks, and a couple of
Congratulations.
Thank you. And a couple other secrets, which I can't say just yet, but one of them, you mentioned alcohol. One of them is going to be really, really cool. Can't talk about it yet, but maybe by the time we have our next podcast, we may or may not be able to talk about that. We'll see.
I
So yeah,
love to
lots
hear
of
it.
exciting stuff on the horizon.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks, Eliza.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Hotter Than Health. As we mentioned before, we are doing a giveaway. We're going to be giving away protein. We're going to be giving away a black coffee acid kicking alkalizer, as well as some other supplements. And it is not a small giveaway. If you are interested, we're going to be spreading this through this week and next week. Head over to Hotter Than Health podcast, tag anyone that you think would benefit from this episode and see value in it, and let them know why they should listen. And you will be entered in to win. I'll reach out to the winner at the end of next week and at the end of the week after next. So you have tons of opportunity to win every single time you comment. That is an entry into winning. And just go to Hotter Than Health podcast and comment on the most recent Instagram post. But I hope you all loved it. I know I did. Had the best time interviewing Dr. Daryl. He is so brilliant and has such a great way with words and makes it so easy to understand and incorporate all of these amazing habits into your lifestyle. But thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already checked out the Hotter Than Health podcast on Spotify, head to Spotify, click follow or Apple Podcast, because not everyone who listens subscribes, and I promise you subscribing is the best and most amazing way to support the podcast. We will talk to you next Thursday.